right, guys, it's time to get Billsy. Big news here. Jim Leonhard, the passing game defensive coordinator and assistant head coach of the Denver Broncos, is going to be the defensive coordinator of your Buffalo Bills. Woohoo! Just as we had hoped, we talked about it earlier this week on my most viewed video. I've only started this channel less than 2 weeks ago, and that video had right around 1,200 views. So thank you for watching that Jim Leonhard video when he was being kicked around as potential front runner. But why is that good news for the Bills? So I've been putting together notes over the last week and a half, or essentially since Sean McDermott got fired, because the idea was that they would most likely go with an offensive-minded coach. So who would be the defensive coordinator? And the number one on my list were either Jim Schwartz or Jim Leonhard. Take 1A, 1B. Jim Leonhard preferred. Jim Schwartz, I thought, might be more likely. Preferred Jim Leonhard because the system is radically different from what we've seen the last 9 years under McDermott. So I just want to get that bad taste out of my mouth. So we're going to move on with that. Schwartz, who knows what's going on with him, but he's not going to be a Buffalo Bill coach now, so we're moving on. But the reason why I love Jim Leonhard is because it signals a philosophical change. It's not only a personnel and formation change, it's a schematic and philosophical change. So, McD was more of the base defense of a nickel with a 4-3 hybrid in there. And then this is going to be a 3-4 odd man front 5-2 with McDermott being more soft zone coverage. This is going to have more man coverage and the zone coverage will be a little more aggressive. So you can't play man every play. That's just the reality of it, right? But you're going to see more cover 1 and cover 3 in this system. And if you don't know the difference, so cover 1 is a man-to-man defensive scheme where you have 5 defenders covering receivers, okay? Then you have 4 pass rushers and a free safety. That's the cover 1, who's kind of covering the deep part of the field, okay? Now, cover 3 is when in this alignment that you'd be more in a zone coverage. So it's where the 2 cornerbacks and safety are dropping deep to cover thirds of the field, the deep thirds, and then the linebackers and other players will drop and cover the short part of the field. So again, you can't play man all the time, but you're going to see a lot more man with cover 1 than we ever saw with McDermott and his system. Now, why this is great? Because this allows more versatility, more aggressive style, more attack-oriented. The structure is going to be different in the sense that the 3 defensive linemen that you have, you're going to have a defensive end. Both of them will be inside of the offensive tackle. Then you have a nose tackle that will sit right in front of the center. And then you'll have your outside edge rushers, okay, which typically are called like a Jack and a Sam. So, or Jack/Will. So they call him the Jack, kind of Jack of all trades. His idea is in passing situations, he's going to go for the quarterback. And running situations, he's going to have more ability to cover a running back coming out of the backfield or a tight end. And then the strong side, or the Sam is on the strong side where the tight end would be. You would cover him. Not as much of a pass rusher as, say, the Will, but certainly has pass rushing responsibility. Okay, so the idea of the defensive ends in this is they're going to hold blockers, attack 2 gaps, which means gain the responsibility of both the tackle and the guard potentially, which will then free up the edge rushers and or the linebackers here, okay? The linebackers will be the outside edges that I mentioned. You're going to have 2 middle linebackers here. Now, the nose tackle, he's there to penetrate and kind of make a dent into the offensive line. So maybe you're pressuring him into the quarterback, or if it's going to be a run, not allow that run to come through the middle of the line. And the middle linebackers there's twofold. There's one will be primarily a disguised blitzer, and the other will be, again, primarily and typically somebody's going to cover the middle of the field. Now, obviously, all these things will change. There's no 100% one positional play one or the other, but that's the idea. It's that versatility and to have guys be able to play a multitude of positions. And also, with this, the way Leonhard runs it, it's more of a, hey, pre-snap, when the quarterback comes to the line of scrimmage, takes a look at the defense, it's going to be radically different when the post-snap comes and what they're seeing. So the idea is to confuse them pre-snap So that way, when they come line of scrimmage, they don't go, okay, I know where this guy's going to be. So my primary receiver is going to be this guy. I can throw it to him. You want to have them overthinking when they're going through the progressions, okay? Because that millisecond that they're taking to take that actual look is exactly what you might need to get a sack or maybe for a defensive back to get into better coverage. So you're trying to mess with the quarterback and even the play caller's mind pre-snap so that way post-snap they don't know where to go with the ball. Now, with this odd man front, I'm thinking of the Bills players. Now, since we haven't ran that, there's going to be some guys who just don't fit the personnel for this. And that was a point of contention with potentially bringing on a guy like Jim Leonhard by some folks. But to me, it's a welcome one because we need something radically different. We need a defense that can close up shop when Josh Allen gives us the lead at the end of a game, rather than a defense that plays scared, plays tight, and pisses down their leg at crunch time and blows leads like we've seen time and time and time again. Okay, now, when you look at the guys that we have on the D-line, so you look at, say, Greg Rousseau, I think you look at him as more of a strong side backer here, somebody who can set the edge and in terms of the run game, but still get after the quarterback. I think he's perfect for that role. You look at a guy like Dorian Williams. I think he's fantastic for the jack linebacker. He's a guy he's a ball of fire, man. He's a bull in a china shop type of player. He's a guy that I really think was neutered by Sean McDermott's defense. It was always throttle down, throttle down. In this defense, give him the green light, and that means go. Get your ass to the quarterback, light running backs up when they come out of the backfield. I think this is a defensive situation that is perfect for D-Will. I can't wait to see him flourish in this defense. If anybody's going to show themselves well in this, it's going to be Dorian Williams. So look out for that. I also think Michael Hoyt, assuming he can come back and be healthy, I think this suits him very well. He could play either side. He's a really good edge setter if need be on the strong side, but he's also somebody who can get after the quarterback, and we saw that. He only played 6 quarters for us this year, but in those 6 quarters, he had 2 sacks and also got a lot of pressures and hits on the quarterback, and that allowed the other guys around him to play at a higher level. So honestly, I think he's a guy who could play both the Jack or the Sam. So I think he's a perfect fit for this role. When it comes to the D-line itself, at defensive end, this is where it gets a little hairy. You want your D ends in a 3-4 to be in the 280 to 300 pounds or so. So can be a little lighter or a little heavier than what we have with, say, Epinesa, who's maybe 260 or so. But you look at a guy like Ed Oliver, and he's certainly not a nose tackle in this. I don't know that he fits the DN role either. I don't know that he's a guy who's going to hold blocks up. He's a penetrator. He's a guy who's supposed to get the quarterback, and he's not a guy who can play one of the edge rushers. He just can't in this system. So he's kind of square peg round hole. Now, if he changes the way he plays a little bit and they coach him up, perhaps he could fit really well at 290, 295 pounds or so. But I think TJ Sanders, defensive tackle by trade and drafted as such, but ended up finding himself playing a lot of defensive end this year because of how decimated the Bills' defensive line was. I think he fits perfectly in the defensive end role at 3-4, not so much the defensive tackle, nose tackle role. So I think him moving over, and again, him getting that experience in the 3-4, this year would translate well to the 3-4. Now, Deion Walker, when you look at height and weight, you think this is a perfect guy for nose tackle. And you might not be wrong, but there's a couple caveats here. One, Deion Walker's 6'8", about 340 pounds or so, okay? But he plays really high. He's tall. At nose tackle, you want a guy who can get leverage. You want a guy who is the lowest man wins kind of thing. That's what it is in the trenches, especially with defensive tackles and centers and interior linemen. It's kind of like in wrestling, in college wrestling or amateur wrestling. The lowest guy wins is a big thing that is talked about, right? Well, he needs to get his ass lower. He's a big dude, long legs, kind of oddly shaped for a man of his size. And he's more of a penetrator. He's not a guy who holds up blocks. He actually plays a lot like Jordan Phillips, who was also built more like a nose tackle, 6'5", 365 pounds, but was more of a penetrator. We need him to hold up the run, make a dent, and hold up blockers, make a dent in the run game, first and foremost. I think he has the capabilities. We just need his pad level a little lower to be able to really fulfill that role. But I'm excited to see where he goes. Now, guys like AJ Epinesa, we're not going to get into because he's a free agent. He might not even be here. But these are guys that are still under contract with the Bills on the line. Now, you look at Dwayne Carter, hurt most of the year. I think he fits really well in the defensive end role. Not necessarily. I know they're trying to force him into a defensive tackle role this year, like a one tech. He's not that guy, but I think he'd be great, much like T.J. Sanders, in that defensive end role, assuming A, he can stay healthy, and B, learn to play a little differently schematically. But I think he could find himself. He's built perfectly for it, 6'3", 305 pounds or so. I think he's built perfectly for a DN role at 3'4". Now, when it comes to the linebackers, this is where we have some issues because we don't really have the prototypical middle linebacker that you would want in this. And this is really the key to this system. Now, you need guys that can cover tight ends and running backs on routes in the middle of the field, but that can also be thumpers in the run game. And Terrell Bernard ain't that guy. So I don't see where they fit him at all. I mean, he's too small, he's too slow, he's not a middle linebacker at 3'4", plain and simple. And he's too injury prone. So we're really thin here. I mean, you look at guys that are free agents like Matt Milano and Shaq Thompson. One, does Shaq Thompson still want to be here because he came here from McDermott with his time in Carolina? Of those three guys, he might be the one holdover that you could keep. Milano's too injury prone, too beat up. It might be a little too small. He can definitely cover guys coming out of the backfield, but I just question if he could fulfill that role for the long haul. And he'd have to come at a very discount team-friendly cap hit, I'll tell you that much. But I digress. I think we're going to have to start anew at inside linebacker, quite frankly. Now, going to the defensive backfield, this is where it gets really interesting. So corners in this are going to be more press man outside, which is vastly different from what we saw with the Bills and their soft zone coverage that we've dealt with the last 8 or 9 years. Now, corner press man outside means the corners are man coverage predominantly, and they're forcing the receivers to stay outside. Okay, you want to keep them on the boundary. Okay, now the cornerbacks are going to use inside leverage to force those receivers toward the sidelines, and then they're going to kind of trail that receiver as they go down the sideline. Okay, now the safeties are going to play a little different. Okay, so the cover one safety, if we're playing the deep lying safety, they're the ones going to be playing center field, deep down the field. Then the other safety is going to be more up towards the box, up towards the line of scrimmage to potentially, A, be a disguised blitzer, B, cover potential players out of the backfield, whether it's a running back or even a tight end, potentially. And I think that role's got Cole Bishop written all over it. Now, can he play deep lying safety? 100%, absolutely. But when he was at Utah, he was known as a great run stuffer, somebody who can get after the quarterback, and we saw more of that when he was given that green light to do that this year. So I think really when it comes to where he plays, you find a guy who can play the opposite of him and then fill him in whatever role we don't fill. So in other words, if you've got a deep lying safety that you sign in free agency or even potentially through the draft, but I think free agency would make more sense, then have Cole play close to the line of scrimmage, and then vice versa. Now, Maxwell Hairston, perfect for this alignment and man coverage. I love this. This is going to be perfect for him. This is what he was built for, rather than a cover corner, a man cover corner playing some zone, which is what he was this year. He's a guy that's going to thrive here. Okay, so you have a guy like Christian Benford, who's a zone corner who can play some man. Hairston is a man corner who can play some zone. That's the key here. So I think want to see the best of him, and he's going to be in a second year, hopefully not injured like he was at the beginning of this year. I think we could see a huge year out of Max Hairston. Now, here's where it gets really interesting. Christian Benford, this might be out of conventional wisdom, but I honestly think he would fit very, very well as the deep lying safety. Again, he's more of a zone corner who can play a little man. And in this role, that's not what we need. Could he be successful in it? Sure. But I think he would be a phenomenal deep lying safety here, which would allow Cole Bishop to free up space to play towards the box. And then that allows us the opportunity to get a true man cover corner and still use Christian Benford in a role where he can be very successful. So I'll be curious to see how that comes about. But I think those guys right there um, would benefit from those various moves. Now, what to expect from the edge plate? So the edge rushers are primarily pass rushers first and foremost, but they set the edge as well. Okay, in terms of the run game, and they can peel out into the flat to cover passes in the flat or drop into coverage a little bit. Okay, so you have like a boundary edge guy who they're the primary rusher. That's what I meant by Dorian Williams or even a Michael Hoyt. Then you have like a Greg Rousseau guy who's more of like the role of like, hey, I'm long, I'm powerful, I'm going to have edge control. And then you have Michael Hoyt who kind of plays a little bit of both, so he provides depth to both sides. I love it. I love it. Now, the linebacker structure, the Mike or the middle linebacker, he sets the front. He handles all the calls. He's going to also carry the any tight ends that come into the middle of the field. He's also going to be a run stuffer here. And he's going to be somebody who's going to cover any kind of curl or hook routes in the middle of the field. And then you have the Dorian Williams guy, more chase and pressure, blitz, really just get after the quarterback, okay, and match backs that come out of the backfield as well. But in the end, I think ultimately we need some middle linebackers that just fit a little, instead of square peg round hole, find guys who really fit that. And I'm going to do some digging in to see who free agents are and some potential draftees that might fit those roles. So we'll see how that comes about. Now the base pressures, they're simulated, so 4-man rush, but they'll have 5 or 6 guys at the line of scrimmage. So the idea would be if you have your 3 down linemen, your edge rusher, and maybe a linebacker or 2, it's hard for the quarterback and O-line to know who's going to do what, because what happens is if you send a safety or an inside linebacker, that means one of the defensive linemen are going to drop into coverage, okay? And that's to confuse the O-line and the quarterback. That's really what you want. Now you want D linemen dropping in hot lanes and bringing second level defenders to replace them, right? So the idea is to muddy the quarterback's read, make the offensive line really struggle to understand who they need to block, and the quarterback really struggle who's going to be in what zone. Okay, so this is going to be huge for us because a lot of times teams have mentioned in the past that they knew offensively, like T. Higgins mentioned, he knew what the Bills were going to do defensively. He just knew it. The idea behind this is to screw the mind of the play caller and the quarterback pre-snap. So then post-snap, they don't know where they're going to go with the ball. So, Bills fans, get excited about this. We're going to have some more in-depth thoughts and analyzation of players that are currently on the Bills roster that may or may not fit, and then outside guys, whether free agents or draftees, that would fit this defensive realignment for the Bills. So, get excited. Great things are ahead. You know what I say? Go Bills.